finally time to test out the new Callaway Epic fairway woods. Now I've got the Callaway Epic Speed as well as the Epic Max, and I'm going to compare them to last year's Maverick offering using the GC2 HMT here at Leeds Golf Club. Right, first up I'm going to start with the Epic Speed. This is the smaller of the two models. Now I've got the same shaft in both. It's a hazardous green, IM10, and it's a 60 gram 6.0. Now that's probably a little stiffer than what I'd normally use, but let's just go and see how it performs. This definitely feels a bit stiffer already. Decent strike, but a bit right. To be fair, this still seems to be flying a really good distance. I mean, I've got the green set at 215 and I'm pitching them a lot of them on it, which is pretty decent length for me with a 3-wood. So as expected, I'm hitting a lot of these left to right due to that stiffer shaft in this, but I have to say for me, I tend to have a big miss if I'm going to have one to the left, so that kind of eliminates it with this. And also I feel like I can really kind of give it a stronger left wrist and close that club face down more and get a straight one if I need to. But it's definitely not quite as consistent as I would expect with my normal setup. I have to say I'm loving the feel of this. So that performed probably quite similar and also better than I would have expected for different reasons. The average distance came out at 212, which I'm definitely pretty happy with, and my longest shots were up there at 219, which for me with a 3-wood is a really good carry distance. And I was also pretty happy with some of the variables, such as the spin. But then in terms of ball flight, I definitely had a bit more of a left to right shot shape going on. That's quite unusual for me, but definitely a characteristic of a shaft that's slightly too stiff for you. You could definitely see that in my first shot, which I hit way right, but then after this I did manage to adjust. And some of the shots really I managed to get to finish left of the target, but I did feel like I had to really shut the club face down to do this. Overall my dispersion wasn't actually that bad. I definitely had more that finished right at the target down to the shaft, but really I'm pretty happy with the size of the dispersion overall. Right, let's go hit the Epic Max now and see what the differences are. Right, I've got exactly the same shaft here, so that's going to be really good to compare directly between the Epic Speed. Now I have to say straight behind the ball you can notice this is a bigger head. But another noticeable thing is the face feels slightly squarer and also a little bit shallower, which is not necessarily my preference, but then I have to say I'm a little biased because I do just prefer that compact fairway head. But other than that, the aesthetics are pretty much exactly the same in terms of the crown, the alignment features, and I do really like the way the colour of this shaft sits into that black club head. That launched higher straight away. It actually doesn't feel like I'm going to lose this as much to the right as it did with the other one, even though the shaft's the same, which is pretty interesting. It does actually feel like it sounds a bit more higher pitched than the other model. Oh, I struck that really good. I really left that out to the right and it's gone pretty straight to be fair. So when we take a look at the data, quite a lot of things happened that I probably would have expected. The launch angle went up, the peak height went up, and the descent angle also went up, which all means you're going to get that higher ball flight that's going to stop softer on the greens. We also saw a bit of extra spin too, up at the 3,500 compared to 3,000 with the Epic Speed model. Now one thing that did actually go down was the distance. I averaged at 207 here compared to 212, so 5 yards distance. Now this seems to be something that always happens when I go up to a bigger model head. Now I think that's a bit personal to me, and not necessarily what everyone would see, but I also think because this is designed to be a bit more forgiving, if people are going to hit shots straight, they might pick up more distance because of that. Now my dispersion was actually a bit tighter with this, mainly because I didn't really have those really far out to the right shots, And I did feel like this was a bit easier to hit a draw with than the other offering, even though they had the same shaft in, which is pretty interesting. Now let's go back and hit last year's Maverick and see how it stacks up compared to this year's offerings. So this was actually my gainer last season because I liked it so much in testing. I've got the standard Maverick offering in the head, which is also 15 degrees, which we see in this year's offerings. Now in terms of spec, I've got an even flow riptide shaft here. Now this is still 60 grams, but it's 5.5, so not quite as stiff. Another notable thing is this is cut down, so it's slightly shorter than what we've seen in the standard length offerings this year. What I liked about this last year was just how easy it was to launch. Now having it hit it with the other models, I have to say they both fly probably just as high or maybe even higher. I think it's really important in a fairwood to have something you feel comfortable getting up in the air and getting that height on it, because I know necessarily for me, earlier I didn't really like playing fairwoods and I'd always go to extra hybrids in my bag instead because I felt like they were easy to launch. So for a lot of people, these are going to really help out in that aspect. It's noticeable there's actually a bit more of the coloured paint popping on the top of the crown here. I think I do like having those kind of 3 swabs of orange rather than just the one bit of green that they have on the new offering. So I've hit all 3 offerings now, and I have to say there probably wasn't a massive difference in performance from club to club. I did find the Maverick a bit easier to hit, obviously because it's custom fit to me and I'm very used to using it. So there's definitely other variables in the other 2 models that didn't necessarily suit me, such as the length of the shaft and the fact it was a bit stiffer. But leaving that to one side, let's talk about the differences. The Maverick came out at 210 on average, so 2 yards shorter than the Epic Speed, but slightly longer than the new Epic Max. This is probably what I would expect. It's a slightly smaller head than the new Epic Max, so just giving me the ability to go at it a bit more. Now in terms of dispersion, the Epic Max was definitely the best model out of the 3. It wasn't by massive amounts, but to say that this club wasn't set up to me and it was still more forgiving is definitely something there. One thing I liked about this fairwood when I put it in play was just how easy it was to launch, and we've still got those conditions in the new offerings. In fact, I would say they're both a bit easier to launch and flew a little bit higher than the Maverick, and also the height of each shot was a little bit more consistent with the new offerings. Now my preference between the 2 new models would still be towards the Epic Speed, and this is a slightly smaller head than the Maverick, which I really do like in terms of look, but I also think it's quite impressive that I managed to get more distance and not that massively different dispersion from a more compact club head. Hopefully later in the season I can get the new models built up in my spec, and then I'm going to get them in the best fairway woods test and see just how they perform compared to the other offerings on the market. Obviously I used the Maverick last year, and given the changes I've seen here today, I would definitely be quite happy replacing it with the new Epic Speed offering. Right, that's all for today. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on notifications too. And if you're after more golf content, head to the National Golfer social media channels for more.